Well, as you know, if you've been listening all week, it's been a busy week here on Capitol Hill with the August recess quickly approaching. They're trying to jam in as much as they can. Well, last night, the House approved the National Defense Authorization Act, despite objections from the House Freedom Caucus, which I discussed earlier in the week. This $839 billion act includes $37 billion more than the White House sought. But it fails to address many existing problems, including vaccine mandates for our soldiers, which are driving many of them out of the military. And today, despite the horrible economic news this week that every American family is feeling, 9.1% inflation, what is the Democratic leadership focused on? Yeah, you guessed it, abortion. Earlier this afternoon, the House passed two abortion-related bills which we already know that the Democrats do not have the votes in the Senate to pass, but they're doing it anyway. Joining me to discuss everything from Capitol Hill this week and what is ahead is Connor Semelsberger. He's FRC's Director of Federal Affairs, Life, and Human Dignity. Connor, welcome back to the program.
Yep, happy Friday, Tony.
Well, I'm glad it's Friday. That means Congress is getting out of town and they can't do any more damage. Let's talk first about the abortion votes that happened earlier this afternoon. Tell us what happened.
Yep. So again, just like you mentioned, the Congress has already voted on what they call the Women's Health Protection Act. We call it the Abortion on Demand Until Birth Act because that's what it does. They voted on this bill last year in September and it passed. Senate's already voted on it twice, and it's just a failed piece of legislation that the American voters do not support. That unfortunately, though, did pass the House 219 to 210, mostly along party lines there. And so,
and again, just to explain that for our listeners, because we've heard all this about codifying Roe v. Wade. This goes further than what has been the prevailing policy on abortion in this country, because there have been some limitations. This would essentially erase every pro-life law that has been passed by the states in the last 4 decades.
Yep, and it's laws like ultrasound requirements, parental consent for minors. These are common sense laws that most have got bipartisan support in their state chambers that would just be wiped out because the federal government says there's now an unfounded right to abortion if this became law.
So there were two bills. That was the first one, and it passed. The second?
And then the second one, while they claim it's about just protecting a woman's right to travel across state lines to get a health care procedure, this bill was nothing of the sort. It's a law that was pretty sloppily drafted because it provides cover for human traffickers, those that want to abuse maybe minors to take them across state lines. It would stop any state from using their laws to enforce against those trafficking minors across state lines, or even stopping chemical abortion drugs from flooding from other countries or other states into their states. It would stop states from having any ability to enforce those laws. And so it's a dangerous law. And again, that one passed 223 to 205, picking up actually a couple Republican votes there. But it's one thing that they claim it's just about the travel. But again, when you read the details of the bill.
Look, everything they put forward, you can never rely on the title or the description. You've got to look at the details. Everything is a massive overreach to try to bring more power here to Washington, D.C., and usurp the rights of the states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was great parity today. That was what the Democrats offered, those two radical bills. And then on the flip side, Republicans had opportunities to use their minority rights to offer two other pieces of legislation, one that would protect infants that survive abortion after birth. No Democrats voted for that. And another bill that, again, simply would prohibit minors from being able to go out of state to get abortions. And Democrats, again, rejected that. Two common sense pieces of legislation.
Incredible. And as you mentioned, this is now going to go over to the Senate. It'll be the third time, if the Senate votes on it, it'll be the third time the Senate voted on the bill. It's going to fail because you got to get 60 votes. Mm-hmm. And they don't have 60 votes to pass it. So why are they doing it?
Yep, and you heard it today. It's politics, 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 not what matters for the American people. Even Democrat members on the floor said, we know we don't have the votes in the Senate, so go elect two more pro-abortion senators.
I mean, is that really what Americans are concerned about when they're paying almost $5 a gallon in gasoline? Every time they go to the grocery store, they're paying at least 10% more than they were last year. Is abortion what they're concerned about?
Not at all. Farthest thing from the truth. Like you said, most Americans just want to pay the bills. August is coming quickly. People are looking next school year, getting ready for the supplies they need for their school kids. This is not what they care about, but yet Democrats continue to ram through this abortion radical agenda on the American people.
Incredible, but it does provide, as you said, the contrast between the two parties and what they stand for and what they think are priorities. Now let's discuss the NDAA. That's an annual must-pass piece of legislation that was passed late last night. Obviously, we want to support the military, and so do Republicans. But the act, as written and passed, has some major problems.
Yeah, that's right. And it got about 100 members voting against it. And yeah, all throughout, there's just little things laced that we've been tracking, concerned about, whether it's expanding cost or access to abortifacient drugs for the veterans or military, and some new things for the first time, trying to expand clinical trials on veterans that suffer PTSD to include psychedelic drugs as a treatment. So this is where they're moving, to use our veterans and service members as guinea pigs for these experimental treatments. So those are the kinds of things that are in there that we'll want to make sure are not included. Thankfully, though, this House-passed version did not include draft our daughters, but unfortunately, we've got word that we think the Senate version, we haven't seen text yet, does include language to draft our daughters once again. So we'll be on high alert to make sure that does not make it to the final bill.
Wow. And back on the drug component, the psychedelic drugs, I mean, what we have historically, what we know to be the truth, what we know that happens is they use the military to advance these radical social policies only to spread them more broadly in the culture afterwards. It's how we got, the overturning of DOMA and then same-sex marriage. They first pushed that in the military.
Yep, it becomes the stomping ground for their policies, experiments. VA committee, defense committee, that's where they experiment, whether it's drug policy, marriage, abortion, or contraception, and push it around the country.
All right, so Connor, we got 2 weeks left in July, August break. They go, and certainly they're going to be getting out of town because it's an election year and they want to go back home and campaign. What are we looking at in these next couple of weeks?
Yeah, as they always say, nothing like the smell of the August recess gets Congress moving faster to get work done, and that's hopefully what they'll do. But again, not good things. So, yep, they got the National Defense Authorization Bill they'll hope to get passed by the end of the July period here. But then it's federal appropriations, right? That's the job of Congress, is the purse, to use the taxpayer funds they collect to fund the federal government and its programs. And again, sloppy work yet again. They've rammed through funding for the entire federal government through committees with very little time for members to review and engage, and they're going to expect to put those bills on the House floor in the next 2 weeks to head out of town, hopefully sending those over to the Senate.
And when they get back in August, in September, they'll be back here, but in August, they'll be doing, a number of them will be doing town hall meetings, and they'll be meeting with constituents. It's a great time for folks to talk to their members of Congress. And we have a resource, a vote scorecard, that shows where their member of Congress stood on the issues. Very quickly, tell our folks how they can access that.
Yeah, on frcaction.org, you can see every single member of Congress and U.S. Senator on what votes they've taken for the whole Congress last year and this year. And it's really run the gamut of all the issues we talk about on the show and work here at FRC: marriage and sexuality, education, pro-life issues, economy, things like that. This is what they've been asked to vote on, and you can check out where your members are at.
All right, Connor Semelsberger, always good to see you. Thanks for the work you guys and your team, what you do on Capitol Hill.
Yep, looking forward to the weekend, just like you, Tony.
Yeah, that's for sure.